you still have to meet the letter of the law. That's a requirement. But going beyond the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, looking at a buyer and knowing what his intent really is, what you want to do is treat that person with fairness and goodness. So you're going beyond just trying to do the right thing.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here. I'm your host. I'm also very thankful for you joining us today, as I am Mr. Joel Malkoff. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Rick.
Now, you and I, Joel, we were just talking about ethics and how they affect the globe and everybody who operates a business or even personally. And we're going to be taking, obviously, a deep dive into your new book, Selling Ethically, which I can't wait to take a look at with you and learn from you. You've taken a very interesting approach to writing this book. Now, before we do that, Joel, I was wondering if we can just learn a little bit more about yourself. And I think it might be a good place to start is to find out where you're located in this big, wide, wonderful world of ours.
Well, I'm located in Avon, Connecticut, U.S., and grew up in New York City. From my own point of view, my experience in writing the book was really an offshoot from my career. I'm running a medical device company in Connecticut. We specialize in medical research products. And it's especially exciting in terms of today because we're helping researchers find cures for and develop vaccines for what's going on today with COVID-19.
Very important indeed. Now, given that we're, I guess, largely in lockdown state, I don't know what's happening where you are right now, but when you're free to roam and do as you will, do you have any things you like to do? Do you have any recreations that you get involved with?
Well, I enjoy most, just being outside, taking nice long walks and boating. All those things are very exciting to me. But really over the last year and a half, I wound up perfecting my skills running my company remotely. Oh. So we're very involved with virtual demos and a lot of things that just aren't face-to-face any longer. I don't think there's much of a difference between that and face-to-face in terms of being ethical in business and selling ethically. I think the situation is the same for both.
Yeah, of course. So I was just wondering, just quickly, what type of boats? River boats, seafaring boats?
Sea, yes.
Nice. There's nothing better.
I like to be the ocean.
Yeah, there's nothing better than getting that salt spray and just that smell of the ocean, is there?
No, there isn't. And when I got married, we moved out of Brooklyn, New York, onto Staten Island, one of the boroughs. So it's an island, and being an island, a little smaller than Australia, but an island.
Yes, an island nevertheless.
Surrounded by water, and it's just great. That's why I kind of allow my mind to think freely.
Yeah, I take a bit of time, Joel, and before we get into the core of the call, because I love to learn more about the people I'm speaking with. And I always wonder to myself, I have people that I would love to meet, be they famous or not, doesn't really matter. But if you had somebody that you could meet, who would you choose? Who would you love to meet? Are they an author? Are they a business owner? Are they a superstar?
It's interesting. It's probably from a business point of view. It'd be interesting to meet a Stephen Jobs of the world.
Yes.
God bless his soul. But
yes.
Just that creativity end of it. And I think from a business point of view, he's one of the people that I really look up to for his own creativity. Like all people, we all have our pluses and minuses, but his ability to see into the future and his desire for perfection along with simplicity.
Yep.
It's just a perfect combination. And I think because he has he's an artist of heart, that with business sense together just made a very unique situation. And look at the company he built and rebuilt and then rebuilt again.
Yes. Says something for perseverance, doesn't it?
Yeah, just, totally amazing. Just totally amazing.
So when you were growing up, Joel, I recall I enjoyed reading books. Did you enjoy reading books when you were growing up?
I think just growing up in the streets of New York, Brooklyn in particular, it was a little bit of a tough life. So, you kind of I grew up in a very ethnic area, Italian and Jewish. So there's a lot of macho-ness. There was a little less reading and there's a little more physicality.
You're right.
But I think when I was growing up, what I enjoyed most was actually comic books. So,
very good.
Idols would be like Superman. So that's someone I always kind of looked up to, and it was a degree of ethics that was there, and especially when it came out, excuse me, really publications around World War II. There was kind of fighting. He was a crusader, if you will.
Yes.
So it was just something I enjoyed growing up. As when I went to college, then I started getting into, and high school, of course, more serious reading. But I always gravitated more towards business books, and then later in life, a little more towards spirituality.
Fantastic. Do you, you're a man of God. Is that part of your life?
Yes, it's probably the core. I had an epiphany when I was in my 30s, so I kind of went from what I might say unethical behavior to ethical behavior because of the epiphany. So it was kind of a spiritual awakening, and I believe everyone can have a spiritual awakening in whatever religion you happen to believe in, or even from a nature point of view. Mm-hmm. But my book itself is, you might call it a narrative nonfiction or a creative fiction, but it's actually an autobiography of myself. So it's when I first got into my career in business, having that epiphany, and then going from unethical behavior to ethical behavior. So the book itself is a documentation, if you will, from when I graduated Pace University in New York City with a very high degree of what I believed ivory tower ethics. Mm-hmm. And because it was 73, it was an energy crunch. I wound up not being able to work for a large corporation, so I wound up my first job in the car industry. So you can imagine, I learned the art of bait and switch and manipulating with fear, and quite a lot of unethical tactics to make one-shot sales. And I kind of went through that period of my life until I got a job with a large corporation, mm-hmm. Selling commercial lighting, figuring that would be a little more ethical, with a little high-mindedness of bringing light into the world. But, the light bulb industry, there's only a couple of players in it, and there's price fixing, and there's a number of other things that go on in that industry. Yeah. So after that point, I went into the medical world, figuring selling medical products, what could be better? Saving lives and just helping people. But there's many issues in the medical industry too. So I kind of walked down that path, and until I had my epiphany and had a spiritual awareness, that's when I felt more accountability to be more ethical to myself, to God, and my fellow man. So the book is my book is actually that. It's that stage. Yeah, and it's written as a parable. So I always found myself, when I was reading business books that were parables, I kind of got it. I didn't need summaries or subcategories or
definitions,
different sidebars. Yeah. I just wanted to read a story and have the message come through. So that was the reason I wrote the book as a parable. So in essence, I wind up having an experience, and I wind up winding up in heavenly court. So I'm being tried, if you will, by angelic prosecutors and judges. Was I ethical in business? So I kind of go back in time and visit my past life and see what things went on and how I look at it right now. And then I have to kind of, I'm on trial for my life. So
so pretty
that's kind of the premise of the book. Yeah, very short. So I kind of get the message across. You might look at it like a movie, It's a Wonderful Life, where you kind of visit, back in time.
I was about to say it sounded like a movie script.
Yeah, Christmas Carol, things like Christmas Story, things like that.
Yes.
So that was my focus in the book, and because I'm running a medical device company, which is my full-time and a half job. The book was written nights, weekends, vacations. It took about 8 years to write the book.
Wow!
I finished it in 10 months, but it took another 7 years to do all the revisions of the book. 60,000 words, bringing it down to 30, bringing it down to 15, bringing it back up to 25,000 words, and that's the final edition of the book. I wanted a fast read. I wanted something where somebody got on a plane in the U.S. going from east to west coast, or going across the pond and going to Europe. They'd be able to finish the book in 3 or 4 hours. So that was the goal.
So when you put pen to paper, if that's the way you were doing it, where did you start? What was the first thing that you said to yourself? How did you go about writing it? Was it easy?
I think it was kind of another epiphany, if you will, where I kind of felt like I wound up being accountable in a heavenly court. Was I ethical in business? So that actually is, from a religious point of view, that's one of the first questions that's asked when you enter the pearly gates or when you go to heaven, because business is a great testing ground. It's a perfect testing ground to see if you're ethical or not in business. So there's so many trials and tribulations in that world. So it was really that thought that I wind up being in heavenly court. And from that thought process, I said, okay, there's going to be a prosecutor and judges, and then I started thinking further about it, and I thought about, okay, as a parable, that would be kind of interesting. And then I had myself, I drew up an outline, and I had the different jobs I had that I wanted to present. And then I thought, how do I get these messages across? So I said, going back and visiting these sites when I was a younger Joel Malkoff, and kind of looking on at the younger Joel and seeing what he was doing, and then going back into heavenly court and defending what I saw. That's kind of how the idea nurtured itself.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate you sharing it. I'm loving this call, Joel. Thank you. I wonder if we can go back to some fundamentals for people that are sitting, listening to this, thinking, well, I've heard of ethics, but what are they? Could you explain to people what ethics are?
Well, I think first, kind of differentiating between acting honestly, which is incident by incident, as opposed to ethics when you're kind of going beyond the letter of the law. So you still have to meet the letter of the law. That's a requirement. But going beyond the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, looking at a buyer and knowing what his intent really is, what you want to do is treat that person with fairness and goodness. So you're going beyond just trying to do the right thing. So from an honest point of view, integrity, you want to provide full disclosure when you're presenting a product or a service to a buyer. You don't want to mislead. You don't want to manipulate with fear. You don't want to slander a competitor. You want to do all those things, so you present yourself as as an honest salesperson, honest business person. But when you really understand what the buyer wants and you understand the intent and you can empathize with what's going on, then you can provide fairness and goodness to the sales situation. And I think that buyer-selling relationship, that's the important part. So it's let the seller beware. It's not let the buyer beware. So the obligation on a salesperson is to be upfront, to provide full disclosure, to, again, not manipulate, not slander. So it's not for the buyer to have to be cautious that the seller is trying to hurt the person. It's the seller's obligation to sell ethically.
Absolutely. The thing that comes to my mind, Joel, is the word intuition, both on the part of the salesperson, but also the buyer, the potential purchaser. I often get a sense, if you will, that this person is a little bit underhanded. I don't feel good about them. Can you spot somebody like that, and what should you be looking for?
Well, yes. I think if you're looking at sellers that may not be ethical,
yeah.
I think there's some key words. You can, and there's also body language. So, as a buyer, and I buy as much as I sell. If I see a seller that isn't looking me in the eyes, that's the first sign that there's a lack of a desire to really contact with me on a level. He's not willing to look me in the eye.
Yeah.
If he's not willing to really introduce himself, and he's putting his name up front and he's shaking my hand, which you may or may not be able to do too much longer.
Digital handshakes.
Those are the things that give me the indication that I may not be dealing with an honest salesperson. Again, not looking in the eye, or as simple as certain words. When a salesperson says something like, "Let me be honest with you," that's a catchphrase to me. It's like, no, you can keep on lying.
Yeah. I often wonder about that.
So when I train my sales force, because salespeople typically have something like that. Well, let me be honest with you. I say it sends a very bad message to a buyer. So I said, to replace a habit like that, you need to replace it with something else. So I'm not just telling my salespeople, don't say, let me be honest with you. I need to give them a replacement. So I say, let me be frank. So when you're talking, say something like that, let me be frank. It may mean the same thing, but it doesn't make that buyer feel a little uncomfortable. So from a buyer to a seller point of view, if I'm sensing the seller isn't really interested in empathizing with me, not really trying to understand what I really need in a product or a service, he's just giving me a whole barrage of qualifying questions and trying to pre-close me. Then I'm sensing there's no long-term commitment. It's a one-shot sell.
I have so many questions that come from this. If you have somebody who comes onto your team, Joel, and they've come from a working environment that supports, if you like, unethical selling behaviour, is it difficult to unwind that and retrain them to a different standard, a different way of selling?
Yes, it is. The person really needs an inner feeling why it's right to now change their behavior and to start selling ethically. If the person just doesn't have that feeling that it's important, then why would the person do it? When I was in car sales, I didn't see any reason to act differently than the way everyone else was acting. So one-shot sell. And you look just to close business any way you can. And when you don't feel a desire to form a long-term relationship with it, that's a real disadvantage to becoming an ethical salesperson. When I moved into the world where I had a sales territory and I had to build long-term relationships, that was the start of the realization that you have to be ethical, or you're not going to be able to build a long-term relationship. You may get a one-shot sale, but you're not going to build a long-term relationship.
I think about this in terms of the buying a car experience from a car lot. And I think to myself, how much different could it be for a salesperson to try to build a real connection, sell you a good car that is in good condition and disclose anything that might be wrong with it, so they're open, honest and upfront, so that you go away and then you could remember that same salesperson. Have you had experiences like that, good experiences?
On a personal level, when I was in the car industry, I haven't really had many good experiences like that. Mm-hmm. There were some people that I did connect to, and I did feel like I didn't want to sell that person something that I knew in my heart was not a good vehicle.
Yeah.
But there are people like Joe Girard, a very famous car salesman that sold thousands of cars every year, and he built his career by being in touch with people and really developing a very solid relationship, where he would get entire families keep coming back to him. It was a little less from the point of view of ethics. It was more from the point of view of he knew how to do really good follow-up. He knew how to touch people in terms of birthdays, anniversaries.
Yes.
He did a good job in terms of making sure he kept his customer base solid. My assumption also is he wasn't selling things that were bad by nature. He was also a new car salesman, so there's a lot more flexibility when you're selling new cars versus used cars. Used cars are just plagued with reasons why you may not want to do full disclosure.
I wonder, when somebody's becoming a salesperson, it's like when you start off as a baby, you have no programming, you don't understand anything, and your exposures, the people that you work with, the people that influence you, have an impact on how you turn out. Could the same be said for salespeople? And when you're training somebody, what is the first thing that you take them through?
Well, I mean, it happened to me. When I graduated college, I had high ethics in terms of academia, mm-hmm. But then I wound up in the car industry. So my mentors were people that weren't at the highest level of ethics that you might want.
Yeah.
And then it was just a process of finally having an awakening and finally having better mentors that I became more ethical. From my own point of view, in training salespeople, you have to do your basics, and I think the basics is really understanding what the buyer is looking for,
yeah.
And that's the first premise. And once you can reach that level, then how you handle the sales situation needs to be very ethical. And then it's going back to full disclosure, not manipulating, not misleading, not slandering competitors. All those things allow you to build trust with your buyer. And many times I have, to the surprise of the buyer, said, I don't think this product is right for you. And after they get over their initial shock, and you may not make that sale, your future is very good because you're going to be first on the list when a person wants to buy something to contact you.
I think also it would position that individual, that salesperson, to make better employment decisions in the future, wouldn't it?
Yes, very much. And, I think it goes from the bottom up, from salespeople learning to the top down, a corporation having good ethics. And, I think ethical corporations, it becomes very difficult today because most corporations look at ethics as a necessary expense. They don't really see it as a profit center. And it really is a profit center because, one, it allows you to build long-term relationships. And once you develop good long-term relationships, it's less costly to advertise your products because the people already know you. And the best business you're ever going to get is going to be references and referrals. And you're only going to get that if buyers trust you. So there are companies that do project an ethical image, which I think is extremely important. But I think most of those companies really don't internalize it, that it really is a profit center. It's not just an expense.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, because I've often heard the saying, Joel, salespeople have more fun. Now, I don't know what you read into that, whether or not they're just being underhanded and unethical by definition, or if they do truly believe the words that are coming out of their mouth. And it'd be a litmus test to stand in front of people like with your knowledge, knowing what you know. I was just wondering, can you recall an experience, without naming names or businesses, maybe share a positive experience that you've had personally?
In terms of
you being a buyer, because I think from a perspective, there's two sides to this. Obviously, there's the selling, that's the seller, and then there's the buyer. So to give balance to the audience, I think it's important if we could give both perspectives, and what you thought about that, and what you thought you left the actual seller feeling about you.
There's also buyer responsibilities, especially today.
Yep.
So let's say I'm looking for a really nice camera, and I know I can buy it for X amount of dollars on, let's say, Amazon, but I want the experience of learning more about the features and benefits of the camera.
Yep.
So I would go into a camera store. A salesperson would approach me. What's your different choices? Some people as buyers would just steal, if you will, the salesperson's time with no intention to buy the product because they can buy it a good deal cheaper on Amazon. Yeah. So, they're gathering all the information, not planning on buying. So when I have situations like that, I would go into the camera store, which I have, and said, I prefer to buy from a local store. I'm willing to pay a certain percent more than I can online.
Yeah.
I appreciate the service. I appreciate the knowledge. But I'm not willing to pay 30 or 40% more. I'm willing to pay 10 or 15% more. And I think when you present it like that to a salesperson, there should be an appreciation. I found there have been. Most of the good salespeople that I have experienced were at a high degree of empathy. They just always looked at it from a point of view of they looked into my eyes, they understood what I wanted, they were very upfront about it.
Yeah.
Those were my good experiences. Everything from buying electronic equipment to cars.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valuable insight. Thank you for sharing. So it gives everybody something to think about on both sides of the coin here. You have a role to play as a buyer, and you have a role to play as a seller. Now, in terms of writing books, Joel, do you think there's anything else coming out of your pen soon?
Well, I think my goal right now, and again, I'm a business person, a salesperson by nature.
Yep.
The experience of being an author was a little new to me. Very difficult industry, by the way. There's very little money in it, and there's surely a lot of labor, and just the PR to help sell your book is just an enormous amount of effort. If you really think about it, there's very few industries that produce 1 million products a year, which is about the number of books that come out a year, not including ebooks. And, almost all of them fail as a seller, of books. So the whole industry is very strange. And, just writing a book, I have experienced, Rick, a good deal of people and companies out there that really are a bit of a scam, where they're saying, use my service, I'll help you sell books, or different ways to game your book so it becomes a top seller by just placing a book in esoteric categories on Amazon. So you rise to the top. I mean, there's a lot of strange stuff going on in the book industry.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see myself at this point writing another book because, again, it was kind of from an epiphany and it was a story of my life. But there are a good deal of other stories that were part of it. So I guess I could get dragged back to Heavenly Court again. That is possible.
For sure,
but most of my effort, most of my effort right now is really trying to reach out to the people that are in ethical companies, VPs, CEOs of really strong companies like, example, Salesforce.com, where you have a very, very ethical company run by a very ethical person. With my goal is, here's my book, read it, and if you like it, please buy a couple of thousand and distribute it to your sales force. So,
absolutely.
What I'm trying to do right now is really what they would call bulk sales in book selling. I would like my book to be used as a tool by companies for entire sales forces.
Well, that's amazing. That's a really good mission and very much one that you should stick to until you see that success, Joe. I wish you all the best with that. Now, when people want to find this book and they want to connect with you to learn more how they can buy it in bulk for their organization so they can start training from top down, where are they going to go?
Amazon, the source of everything. I have a hard-covered book. I have a soft-covered book. I have an ebook, and I just had an excellent actor finish the audio book.
Fantastic.
So there's 4 different versions available.
You can't miss it, can you? Do you have a website that they can visit?
Yes, and the website is theethicsgiver.com.
Well, there you go, everybody who's on the call today. If you're wondering about ethical behaviour in the workplace, or personally for that matter, I strongly recommend you get your hands on Joel's book, Selling Ethically, as he mentioned, on Amazon and also on the website domain that he has just mentioned. And with all that being said, Joel, this has just been one cracker of a call. Thank you so very much for joining me on the My Future Business Show today.
Truly my pleasure. I enjoyed the talk, and thank you again for the interview.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.